Hi, I'm Husnara Begum, the editor of Cheeky Little Careers. For this short video, I'm delighted to say that I've been joined by Alison Dixon, who is a partner at Bird and Bird. Alison, lovely to see you. Thank you very much for agreeing to have a chat with me. Why don't you start by telling the viewers about your career so far and a bit of background on your firm?
Yeah, so I am a partner in the employment team at Bird and Bird. So I work in London. I joined Bird and Bird back in 2002 as a trainee. So it's my first and only job as a solicitor. I've stayed for 20 years. And before that, I did a non-law degree and did the conversion course, as it was at the time, and the LPC, and went straight to Bird and Bird after that. And yeah, so I work in a team of about 20 lawyers in London, 140 odd lawyers across the globe. It's a very international team, and that's just the employment team. The firm is obviously a lot bigger than that, 1,400 odd lawyers across our offices in Europe and Asia Pac.
Okay, we'll come on to your firm in a bit more detail in a moment, but I want to find out a bit more about your career sort of story, really. So you said that you did a non-law degree. What motivated you to do the conversion course? Because it's quite hard work.
Yeah, yeah, it is hard work. I mean, I would say that I was quite academic, and I enjoyed studying, one of those weird people that quite enjoys studying and doing exams. But I didn't have a grand plan. I wasn't one of those people who, knew they wanted to be a lawyer from a very young age. I was heading into my final year of a French degree at Manchester University, and I still didn't really know what I wanted to do. It was kind of last minute bit of research on what might be a good career. I knew from experience that I didn't want to be a teacher, and I'm actually talking to my mum about what might be a good career, and she suggested to me, she said, why, you might make a good lawyer. Why not look into it? And I did, and I thought it would be a good fit for me, and yeah, a good decision, I think, but one kind of made at a time when I didn't really have a huge amount of knowledge of the legal market, law firms, and law practice. So I guess a big decision to be making at that point, but luckily for me, I think the right one.
If students are, unsure about whether to pursue a career in law, either because they've done a non-law degree or, they are law students but are being tugged in different directions, what could they be doing to develop a better understanding of the sector? Yeah,
I mean, I think as much research as they can on the sector in general. I mean, it's a very wide sector. There are lots of kind of options within that. You've got obviously the bar, solicitors, you've got criminal versus civil and commercial law, and I think going to as many careers events and talking to your fellow students and network and yeah, I mean, I think research really, and it's actually something that I think I didn't do as much of as I should or could have done. I've been, I think, quite lucky in my career that I landed up at a firm and in a practice area that I really love. And I think, if I had to go back, that would probably be what I would do more of, is real kind of research into the market and the sector and the different firms, because they are very different, I think.
I agree with you. I think, I didn't do as much research simply because back then in the dark ages, when I was looking to see what I could be doing with my sort of career, law firms just weren't really publishing as much information because, dare I say it, the internet didn't exist. So there is a lot of information. I agree with you. I think students need to attend events, talk to other students and get a better understanding of what pathway would work for them, because there are quite a few. And especially now with the new route to qualification, there are lots of different ways you can actually become a solicitor. So it's important to make sure you follow what's appropriate for you. Talking of appropriate and carving out a pathway, you chose employment in the end as your practice area to qualify into. What led you to that?
Well, so I started off, I did a seat in commercial, and then I did a seat in corporate, and I then did my third seat was in employment, and it just clicked. It was, you know, that's not to say that I didn't enjoy the other two seats that I had done, but as I say, you know, I came into my training contract with quite an open mind, without any kind of particular fixed idea on where I wanted to qualify. So I was kind of very much seeing how it went, and it was just a practice area that really ended up, you know, appealing to me because it involves, well, first of all, it's extremely varied. I would say there's a lot within employment law that you can do. You can litigate, you can do non-contentious work, you know, you can do kind of day-to-day advisory support. So no 2 days are ever the same, and also you can really see the human element of it. Obviously, employment law is about people, and it's very clearly about people. You can see that in your day-to-day work, and I find that very interesting. And it makes, you know, even where you're dealing with very similar matters, they can progress in very different ways because of the people that are involved. So that's what kind of clicked with me, and what I really enjoyed and still enjoy about employment law.
Sure. And you said that you've had 20 years at Bird and Bird. What has been your career highlight? Can you pick one single thing? There must be quite a few.
I would say, I mean, the obvious highlight is being promoted to partner.
Sure.
I think that's the kind of the one that I would pinpoint. You know, that was it. It's just very gratifying to get to that point, and, you know, have that sort of endorsement from the partnership at a firm that, you know, I've given a lot of time to, and I love. So yeah, I would probably say that one. But, you know, in terms of work highlights, there are lots, I think, but that, you know, there's the thing about employment law as well, I think, is that you, as I say, you know, it's very varied. You're generally working on lots of different matters at the same time, so there's a lot of satisfaction to be gained from wrapping something up and feeling like you've achieved something for your client, and you get that quite a lot with employment because you're working on so much, for so many different clients.
Yeah, no. And talking of your promotion to partner, one thing that's quite unusual about you is that you're a part-time partner. You know, firstly, it's refreshing to hear that, and of course to see a female partner. How unusual is that? I'm assuming it's changing, but not probably as rapidly as it should be.
Yeah, I would say it's still quite unusual. I suspect there are more part-time partners out there than we know, because I think there may be a reticence sometimes to draw attention to it if you are working part-time. There is still perhaps this perception that you can't be committed, or, you know, that you're not giving your all to the firm if you're working part-time. But I mean, I think there are definitely other partners at this firm that work part-time, that have a sort of formal part-time working pattern, and yeah, things are slowly changing. I would say that the attitude to part-time working has changed dramatically over my career, certainly, and you know, at partnership level specifically. Yeah. And you know, refreshingly so. But I think, you know, there's still a way to go. But hopefully, you know, the more people do it, the more we demonstrate that it can be done, and it can be done successfully.
How have you made it successful?
Well, I think one thing is making sure that you're always working with a good team. I'm lucky that I work in a team that is big enough to mean that, generally speaking, I'm not working alone on matters. So there is always air cover when I'm not around. That is not to say that I'm not at the end of the phone and available when the client needs it. You know, I think there has to be flexibility. We are in a client service business, and we have to recognize that. But I think having a team that is there and is involved has been extremely helpful, and has been kind of the principal way that I have so far managed to juggle it, I think.
No, that's very, very encouraging to hear. So thank you for sharing that. Let's go back to your lengthy career. You've been at Bird & Bird since joining as a trainee. What's made you stay? Have you ever been tempted to move on?
The thing that has made me stay, well, there's more. I think there's more than one thing, but the principal reason that I am still here is, I would say, the culture of the firm, people that I work with. I feel that it's an incredibly supportive place to work. I've always felt supported and encouraged in my career, and I just like the people that I work with. It sounds a bit stupid or a bit, you know, kind of very simplistic, but that's why I'm still here, principally because the people that I work with in my team, but also across our London office and across our kind of international offices, are nice people. And we're all kind of, it's a very collaborative firm, I would say, and that's what I love about it.
Okay, and how has the firm changed? I remember back in the day when I was a journalist on The Lawyer, we used to call, this was around the time you were a trainee actually, we used to call Bird & Bird a bit of a, you know, West End boutique. It's now far from that, isn't it? It's an international firm.
Yeah, it's grown. I mean, in size, but, you know, globally. So when I joined, I think there was obviously London and perhaps 3 other offices in Europe, and now, you know, we have 30 plus offices across 20 plus countries. Wow. And so that has really changed the nature of the work we do, I think, as well as, you know, it being kind of a huge sort of expansion. It means that a lot more of our work is very international in nature. So working with clients that need support across more than one jurisdiction, and sometimes 50 plus jurisdictions. So that has been a big change, and it's been managed, I think, in quite an organic way. So it hasn't felt at any point during that sort of period that the firm's changed, you know, that it's kind of fundamentally different from how it used to be. I guess the other change is in terms of how it's perceived, perhaps. I think, you know, yes, it was viewed as an IP boutique. Our IP team is amazing and still, you know, market leading, but we are a full service law firm. We have, you know, all different practice areas that are, you know, really excellent places to work. So that is another big change, I think.
Including employment.
Yes, including employment.
Absolutely. And how does Bird & Bird, because this is a really important question, I think, for students who are trying to determine which firms to apply to, how does your firm differentiate itself from competitors?
I mean, I think the thing that I would say, it's slightly hard for me because it's the only place that I've worked, but I think what it's known for certainly is the culture, the fact that it is an extremely kind of, I mean, I guess all law firms say this, but it is an extremely collegiate place to work. It's that the, you know, we do genuinely work as a global team. And I think our kind of legal structure, we're a single partnership profit pool across all of our offices, it is quite unusual, and it does mean that we are incentivized to work together. And that really helps foster that collaborative culture, and makes it feel like, you know, we're not just a London team, we are a global team.
Sure, thank you. You're also the firm's training principal. What makes lawyers or aspiring lawyers stand out to you when you've got your training principal hat on?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think it's actually quite simple. I think it's people with an inquiring mind, people who are curious, who ask questions, who want to know more. And I think also people who are, you know, whether or not you have a particular focus or a practice area that you're desperate to qualify into, and you know that from day one of your training contract, I think it's the people that approach every seat, you know, with the same enthusiasm and kind of drive. I think that's what I like to see. It's, you know, because you can learn something from every seat that you do, and so I think, yeah, that's kind of something that I think is really important.
And you mentioned research earlier, you know, researching firms more thoroughly. What other advice would you give to aspiring solicitors?
Talk to lawyers if you can find a lawyer. I mean, I think, you know, there are lots of people in the profession who are very happy to talk to aspiring solicitors, or people who aren't sure about whether they want a career in the law, or, you know, what type of career they want. So I think it's, you know, speaking to people, trying to build a network, to gain that kind of first-hand knowledge and experience. And also, you know, I guess as you're going through your career, that continues to apply. So here at Bird and Bird, the future trainees who have not yet started their training contracts are given a buddy who is a trainee already working at the firm, so they can reach out and, you know, for help and support from them and our early careers team. And then, you know, obviously as you come through your training contract, you have quite often here more than one supervisor in your seat. So I think it's really kind of communication and talking to people around the profession to gain that sort of understanding of what it actually involves in practice.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think aspiring solicitors and barristers have unprecedented access now to the profession through formal and informal mentoring schemes, through alumni schemes, through frankly social media. You know, every time I look on social media, my feed has someone who is, you know, offering up their services to have a chat with someone who is you know, interested in pursuing a career in law. Yeah. Talking with people offering up advice, is there any advice that you were given that was frankly just wrong and that you wish you had ignored?
No, I don't think so. I don't think I've been given any really duff advice. I remember sitting in a little cupboard type room when I was at school, feeding my details into a questionnaire to find out what my ideal job would be, and I cannot for the life of me remember what result it spat out, but it wasn't lawyer. So there was some advice that I disregarded. I mean, I think that some good advice I've been given. I was given coaching when I was going through the partnership process here, and the coach was very big on, you have to talk about your achievements. You have to be able to talk about what you're doing and get yourself kind of out there and noticed. And that's not talking about sort of boasting about, how great you are. But I think that was really good advice that sort of resonated with me, because, a lot of us tend to sort of underplay our achievements. And I think, if you don't tell people what you're doing and what you're achieving, they won't know. So you do need to kind of get over that reserve, I think. And that was some good advice I got, which I still try and follow with varying levels of success.
I agree. I think that some modesty can sometimes be overstated, and we do need to learn to sell ourselves with confidence. Because as you say, how will the firms you're applying to know that unless you tell them? And I think it's not about selling, it's about storytelling. How can you capture people's imaginations through your achievements? What language are you using to portray what you're trying to articulate? So if you had your time all over again, what would you do differently? I'm assuming it will be selling yourself with confidence will be there.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I mean, I think the other thing was something I mentioned earlier, which is research.
Yeah.
I think, as I said, my journey to Bird and Bird and my journey to being an employment lawyer was partly, that there was some luck involved, because I think I didn't do as much research as I could have done on the firms that I was applying to, the practice areas that they offered. And so I think if I had my time again, it would really be kind of a much deeper dive into the legal market and the differences between firms. And as you say, I think the resources available to me at that time were much more limited than the resources available to students now. So that's a great development, and I think something that a resource that needs to be kind of really used.
No, agreed. And in connection to that, one thing I would add is, when we're having conversations with people, so many of us plan what we're going to say, but we don't plan what we're going to ask. And yes, there is lots of information available out there, and you do have access to lawyers, whether that's trainees, future trainees, associates, partners, etc. But in order to glean the information that's going to be useful to you, you need to ask appropriate questions. So plan what you're going to ask. Do some background research if you're about to go to a law fair, so that you go in and ask intelligent questions that will get you the information you're after. What other advice would you give to aspiring solicitors who are perhaps struggling at the moment, thinking this all looks like really hard work, or they've recently received a rejection email?
I think don't be too downhearted. I mean, I think it's a very competitive world out there, particularly city law. But as I said before, I think the legal sector, the legal profession is a very broad one. There are lots of options out there, and as you said before, with the route to qualification now changing quite significantly with the SQE, there are other paths to becoming a solicitor if that's what you want to do, without necessarily going through the kind of the standard vacation scheme training contract route.
Yeah.
So I think that is worth considering, I would say, and looking into, and also again, talk to people there will be people at your college who are there to support you and give you advice, and I would, use those resources.
No, good advice. Thank you for that. I promised that I'd talk to you a bit more about your work. So what are you working on at the moment? Anything interesting? I hope so.
Yeah, various different things. So as I said, you're always working on lots of different matters as an employment lawyer. So at the moment, we've got a project for a client on remote working. So, how do you put in place a policy to allow your employees to work from abroad? And that's quite, a complex question and needs coordination of advice from various different jurisdictions. So that's something that I've got going on at the moment. And, as a junior lawyer in my team, you would kind of be involved in instructing local counsel on, what questions need to be answered, helping develop those questions, and then coordinating all of the responses and following up with local counsel on kind of the different on any queries, anything that's unclear in their advice, and trying to get a consistent product for the client. But then also we've got some, employment tribunal cases where we're helping our clients to defend claims from former employees. That's a really always an interesting area. And quite often the junior or the trainee that's involved in that kind of work is the one that knows the most about the case, because they'll be involved in gathering documents for disclosure, reviewing the evidence, and putting it all together into a cohesive bundle of documents. So that's always interesting. And then helping our commercial team with employment advice on outsourcing deals, or our corporate team on corporate transactions, and also the kind of really interesting area of senior exec terminations. So doing a couple of those at the moment. They're always quite sort of fast moving and very, as I said before, it's about the people that are involved, and the progress of a matter will really depend on who you're dealing with. So that kind of work is really interesting, and got a bit of that going on at the moment.
What strikes me is the variety.
Yeah, it's extremely varied.
Yeah, and the fact that it's also so closely aligned to what's going on in the real world. So remote working, and I'm assuming during the height of COVID, there was so much going on for employment lawyers. Yeah, it was an extremely busy time. I think thankfully our move to working from home was relatively seamless, but it was, there was an awful lot of uncertainty, as you might imagine. And I don't know if you remember the furlough scheme. So that was entirely new for the UK, and as employment lawyers, we had to get to grips with it and be able to advise our clients on what it all meant, and it was changing on a kind of day-to-day basis. So it was a very busy time, and we're still seeing the impact and the after effects of COVID on that type of thing, remote working, and the fact that companies have ended up with employees in countries and places that they weren't supposed to be in, as a result of lockdowns and travel restrictions. So it's been very interesting. No, indeed. And that if I had to be honest with you, because I qualified into corporates, and now looking back, I'm thinking, why did I not do employment? Because a lot of work I do on the sort of career coaching, outplacement side of my consultancy work is, very closely sort of, working hand in glove with HR people. So we're going to run out of time, but I wanted to ask you one last question, which is really, about the sector, and how you have seen that evolved. We talked about how your firm has evolved and grown organically. What about the sector more broadly? What changes have you seen, and what do you expect will the sector will look like in a few years' time?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that's really changed is of what their external lawyers do for them.
Yeah.
So it's no longer a question of giving them legal advice. You give them legal advice, that's an absolute, that's the starter for 10, but you're expected to help them to manage their external, their external spend. So what you're helping them to do is reduce the amount that they spend on external lawyers, by training them, by spotting, by keeping track of the types of things that you're helping them with, so that you can then help them to avoid the pitfalls that they've encountered in future. I think the sort of the development of technology and the speed of communication now means that clients' expectations are that you are very much more responsive, I would say, than used to be expected. And I think we're now seeing a slight sort of pull away from that. So we've just signed up to the Mindful Business Charter, which kind of tries to put some guidelines around helping people to switch off and avoid that sort of always on communication culture, which can be hugely stressful and damaging. So I think that there's a kind of move towards trying to reconcile client demands on the one hand with trying to maintain a bit of a work-life balance. So I think there'll continue to be a conversation about that as we go forward, and then the use of technology to help our clients, and it continues. They'll expect us to be able to use their own technology and to show to our clients that we're not just kind of email based. We can help manage their projects and go the extra mile, I suppose, to support them.
Yeah, and technology, friend or foe, discuss. There you go. Brilliant. Alison, it's been wonderful chatting to you, really interesting, and a great example of how you don't need to have a grand plan, but having a clear vision of where you want to end up and having the confidence to sell yourself can deliver great results. And so best of luck for the next 20 years of your career. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much.